In this video, we will continue to look at the empirical formula. In the previous video about empirical formula, we looked at how we can derive it if we are given the molecular formula, but there's also another way to calculate the empirical formula. The empirical formula of a substance can also be calculated from the masses of the elements that are used to make it. So here's our example question. Calculate the empirical formula of lithium oxide, which is made from 1.4 gram lithium and 1.6 gram oxygen. There are several steps that we need to follow to calculate the empirical formula. First, we are just going to write down the symbols for the elements that are involved. So the symbol for lithium is Li and the symbol for oxygen is O. Then we need to find the masses that we are given in the question and write them down for each of those elements. The mass for lithium is 1.4 grams and the mass for oxygen in the question is 1.6 grams. The next step is to look up the relative atomic mass, also called RAM or AR. These are displayed on the periodic table, so we need to look on the periodic table, and the relative atomic mass for lithium is 7 and the relative atomic mass for oxygen is 16. Now we have to take the mass and divide it by the relative atomic mass. So for lithium we get 1.4 divided by 7, which gives us 0.2, and for oxygen we have 1.6 divided by 16, which gives us 0.1. Now we have to divide the answers from the last step by the smallest number. The smallest number in the last step is 0.1, so we have to divide both those numbers by 0.1. So first we get 0.2 divided by 0.1, which is 2, and then we have 0.1 divided by 0.1, which is 1. So these two are the numbers of the atoms that we have in the empirical formula. So we have 2 lithium atoms and 1 oxygen atom. So we can start writing down the symbols next to each other like we would in the formula, and then we just put those numbers as the coefficients. So we have 2 lithium atoms, which means it's Li2, and we have 1 oxygen atom, so it would be Li2O1. But we have to remember that if we have a 1, we don't actually write this down, so it's just Li2O. That is the empirical formula for lithium oxide. Now let us look at another example. Calculate the empirical formula of calcium chloride, which is made from 10 gram calcium and 17.8 gram chlorine. Now you can pause the video, grab a piece of paper, and try to calculate the empirical formula yourself. The first step is again to just write down the symbols. So we have Ca for calcium and Cl for chlorine. Then we need to write down the masses that are given in the question, and we have 10 gram for calcium and 17.8 gram for chlorine. Now we need to look at the periodic table again to find the relative atomic masses. And the relative atomic mass for calcium is 40, and for chlorine it's 35.5. In the next step we have to take the mass and divide it by the relative atomic mass. So for calcium it's 10 divided by 40, which gives us 0.25. And for chlorine it's 17.8 divided by 35.5, which gives us 0.5. The final step was to divide our answers by the smallest number, and the smallest number here is 0.25, so we get 0.25 divided by 0.25 for calcium, which is 1. So in the empirical formula there will be 1 calcium atom, and for chlorine we get 0.5 divided by 0.25, which gives us 2. So in the empirical formula there are 2 chlorine atoms. Now again we can just write down CaCl next to each other like in the formula, and remember, if we have a 1 we don't actually write this down, so we just leave it. And then we have a 2 for the chlorine, so we have CaCl2 as the empirical formula for calcium chloride.